Hey guys, it's D.Bowie here, and this is my ultimate starting item guide for safe lane carries. Carry is one of the easiest lanes to itemize in my opinion. You will at least have one hero helping you most of the time, and considering you can predict the enemy lanes, you're going to be fine. That being said, every hero has its particular needs. Is Quelling Blade good in some heroes? What are the follow-up items? Are there any change-ups that players do if they have a terrible or amazing game? This video is here to try to answer all of these questions. Be aware though that this is a Herculean task. Before we start talking about the heroes, I guess I have to repeat myself again, but the safe lane is a mixture of the mid lane and off lane, and of course this is my own opinion about it. Sometimes the only thing you care about is farm, sometimes you're going to be against tons of heroes, and regen and magic stick are going to be very relevant and sometimes even a must. But as a general rule, when you're against one solo offlaner, melee heroes will get stealth shield and a mix of regen items, and range heroes will get almost always one of the two following combinations. Circlet, Wraithband, Recipe, Tangle, Salve, and Iron Branch, or the other build that is 2 branches, sometimes even 3 branches, Circlet, 8 Tangles, and a Clarity or 2, it depends. There are other combinations, but these are very common. After 700, the safe lane isn't as safe as it was before, and it's very rare to see carries, melee or range, go there with less than 2 sets of regen. The first hero we're going to talk about is Slark. Slark is not a strong laner, he's probably one of the weakest laners that are popular right now, so you will always see at least 2 regen items and a stealth shield, sometimes 3 regen items even. Other recurring items are Slippers of Agility, a random branch, or Clarity. Item progression wise, Slark usually goes for PMS, Quelling Blade, Aquila, Treads, Wand, and Shadow Blade. There are some change-ups to those items, the occasional early magic stick against Batrider or aggressive lanes, but the most important one is going Midas. A lot of people associate going Midas with either dying too much in lane or trying to be greedy, and sometimes that's the case, but I want to present another perspective on why going Midas can be effective with Slark. Consider your standard Slark going Shadow Blade. Usually, in a good game, you're going to have Treads, Aquila, Shadow Blade, and Wand at around 13 minutes into the game. In some games, maybe an enemy hero that's pretty good against you could be having their own power spike at that same time frame. So you want an example? In this game, Slark is against a Venomancer, Slaughter, and Jakiro. A ton of AoE magic damage and stun. A lot of it can't be dark pacted, so there's always the chance that he farms a very solid and early Shadow Blade and feeds the first gank he goes for. Now, he could get a 15-minute Shadow Blade with way more levels than he would have with the first gank, and does more HP and damage, allowing for him to get safer ganks, because the amount of farm and experience he got in those 2 minutes is way more than those other heroes are going to get. And this means that the overall difference between you and the enemies are going to be bigger, thus your gank safer and more stronger. Another game we can see Midas being bought is this one, as Seth is one hero that can deal more than half of Slark's HP with 2 raises at the time Slark has a Shadow Blade. That's not even counting the damage lost by Dark Pact, Requiem of Souls, so I can understand him going Midas. In this game he even has a tons of kills before it. This is actually a better example of a game that he didn't have to go Midas, but ended up being blessed with the opportunity to do so because of so many kills he got in the lane. Anyways, the usual items you're going to have at 12 minutes into the game are Shadow Blade, Treads, Wand, PMS, and Quelling Blade. Juggernaut is the next on the list, a very popular hero for a long time now. This is a very simple hero, like Slark you always go stealth, shield and 2 regen items, but you will rarely see Juggernaut going for 3. The thing about Juggernaut is that he is one hero with a lot of burst damage in lane as well as a regen skill. So not only you can get a kill with that mango pop, you can also regen more than a tangle would regen you if you have like 1 or 2 allies in the lane with you. So the usual starting item build is stealth shield, 2 regen items and a mana regen item, more often than not a mango. A change up for that starting item build is Darkseer. A lot of times Darkseers will be spamming Iron Shell in the creep wave, and Clarity allows you to regen more mana while you wait in the tower. At the same time, Clarity is a better item overall, especially if your supports can completely zone Darkseer out of the lane. I mean, you can pop your Clarity, then use Blade Fury, kill the creep that has Iron Shell, and then you keep regening your mana, so this is something you can do. The follow-up items are Poor Man's Shield first, pretty much always, into Quelling Blade, Phase Boots, Aquila, Magic Wand, and finally Helm of the Dominator. Sometimes you will see Aquila before Phase Boots, but if the carry is being used all the time, it's just easier to finish phase boots in the side shop. In one of the games I was able to find there's one change-up where Juggernaut goes Yasha first, so there are two reasons for it. The first one is that there's an Earth Spirit in the enemy team. Most of the time you can Blade Fury out of pretty much all situations in a game, but a good Earth Spirit can silence you instantly. You can also fall prey to those engagements. You start with Blade Fury and then you get ulted right away, so Manta is a great item this game. But most Juggernauts go Helm of the Dominator first, right? Yes, but Yasha is a greedy item that allows you to farm faster. He even goes Iron Talon to increase the farm even further. The truth is, with so much armor, damage and damage block, you will rarely take too much damage to the jungle creeps, and you don't need the HP regen from Helm of the Dominator to farm the jungle. Helm of the Dominator is usually the better and safer choice, but you can consider this Yasha as a Midas. Midas is terrible on Juggernaut, please don't try this at home. Yasha lets you get to camps faster, increases your DPS tenfold, and is the precursor to Manta, and he can do it in this game because the tier 1 was down in 5 minutes, while he just dominated his lane and the game. Pretty much the same approach we saw in the game Slark was dominating. Weaver is a staple of this patch, seen in all lanes, so how do you play her? Well, there are a lot of different builds. The most common one is the 3 branches, circlet, 2 sides of tangles and clarity, but sometimes you will see Wraith Band into a tangle. I really dislike this build and I feel that if you want to go for Wraith Band first, you should start with Salve, Tangle, Circlet, Wraith Band Recipe and finish in a side shop. In regards to what items Weavers go for the core items, it seems to be Ekla, Blightstone, Wand and Dragonlance. Sometimes we see Bootless Weaver, sometimes we don't. A lot of players completely disregard the item, but if there's one position that we see boots sometimes is the safe lane. Sometimes you're against a very slippery hero or a chaser like Storm Spirit and you just want to have more move speed. Sometimes you just like to Tread switch and fight early, and Treads is also a decent item to have. But it's okay if you don't want to go Treads, I won't judge. The usual non-boots item progression is Wand, because you started with the branches and circlet, into Blightstone, Ekla and Dragonlance. And usually, unless you're Fear, that's what you're going to have at around the 10-minute mark. If you go for Treads, you're not gonna finish your Dragonlance before 10 minutes. The order is different though. You got Wraith Band first, finishing it on side shop, then you can either go Wand or Blightstone into Ekla depending on how much kill potential you have in your game. Matumba Man in a game against X decided to go Treads and Bottle, skipping Ekla. I feel like this was very particular to being against X, so he just wants to leave the lane, roam a little bit, and since he's gonna spend a lot of Shukutis to do that, he can regen his mana while he goes to other sides of the map. So let's talk about Lone Druid. A lot of people don't know how to make items for him. The initial item build usually revolves around finishing Wraith Band early, but always starting with 2 regen items. Some players get Stealth Shield in the bear, but it's way more common to see Orb of Venom being purchased, and most of the time that happens when they are against melee offlaners. And Orb of Venom is very good to have on the bear since he is a melee hero. The items you go for afterwards are very similar to the ones that Weavers go for. Ekla and Blightstone are very common, but sometimes boots also appear. At around 12 minutes into the game, you should have Treads, Ekla, Blightstone and Dragonlance on your hero, and maybe a Quelling Blade and Orb of Venom on your bear. Sometimes it's Saltude. This is also very situational, and I really couldn't find anyone that it's very proficient with Lone Druid to answer me. Some players like to go Magic Wand, and that usually means you know your team is going to be forced into fights. As far as I'm aware, there is no change up to this build and every player rushed Dragonlance to make the best use of the level 10 talent for Lone Druid. Lifestealer has been a very popular pick, and even after some armlet nerfs, the starting item build is fairly simple. One Salve, one side of Tangles, Stealth Shield followed by a Quelling Blade after you take the rune. You will sometimes see a Mango being pursed along the way, but only when you feel like you can get kills over and over again in the lane, since Lifestealer doesn't have a lot of mana. The follow-up items are very straightforward. You finish Quelling Blade, Phase Boots. When you completely outlane the enemy offlaner, you go Blightstone because this is very good to force the tower a little bit early. Orb of Venom is also a purchase that sometimes Lifestealers go for when they are struggling to get kills in the lane. The usual 10-minute scenario is having Phase Boots, Quelling Blade, Stealth Shield, Blightstone and Armlet completed, provided you got a good laning phase, which is pretty much always the case when you play Lifestealer. Luna is slowly fading away from the interest of pro players. It's not like she's a bad hero, she's actually as strong as she always was. Problem is lone druids and Terrorblade's popularity. These heroes have been seen in professional and ranked games, making Luna feel weaker than she actually is. Outside of a scenario where you're against those heroes, I highly recommend picking her though. There are two usual starting item builds and they have been seen already: Circlet, Wraithband Recipe and 2 regen items, or the Magic Wand build. You start with 4 branches, Circlet and 2 regen items. There's also the greedier version of that build where you basically trade 1 regen item for a Ring of Protection. It allows you to get more damage in lane with a fast Basilius, and it's usually recommended to go this path when you know there's not gonna be a dual lane against you. The item progression is very straightforward. There's no running away from Threads, Aquila, Helm of the Dominator and Dragonlance. Most of the time the order of items is finishing your wand, but only if you started with branches. Then you get either Basilius or Boots depending on your starting item build. You finish Aquila, and most of the time players prefer to get Helm of the Dominator before Threads. Thread switch is pretty good, but maintaining a healthy HP threshold and even more importantly, being able to get on creep and farm the jungle non-stop are things that Threads can't possibly give you. The only time I saw Threads being purchased first is when a lot of fight is happening in the lane, and then Threads is just an easier, faster and accessible choice. And in that situation, Thread switch makes a ton of difference. At 10 to 12 minutes, you should have Aquila, Dominator, Wand, Threads, and then going towards your Dragonlance. A lot of Lunas go for raindrops, since you're in the squishy side of things, and mana regen is pretty good if you're fighting. Vengeful Spirit carry is something that for some time now is slowly getting traction in programs as well as pubs. A very bulky and somewhat independent core that pushes well, fights well, scales into the late game. I would say that this hero has one of the most stable power spikes in the game right now. And what do I mean by that? My point is that she's okay in lane, okay in taking early towers, okay in the mid game, and after level 25 she is amazingly strong. So there isn't one particular stage of the game where the enemy can tell themselves, well, Venge is weak right now, let's fight. And that's the case for most carries. Sven before Blink, Luna before BKB, Terrorblade before Manta. Anyways, going back to item builds, nothing new guys. 2 regen items and Wraithband Recipe and Circlet, or the Magic Wand opener. Depending on whether you feel like a lot of fights are going to happen in your lane, you can go with only 2 branches and bring an extra mana regen item and skip some regen. But in this game, Baby Knight had a treant with him. The item progression for Venge, as with most of the agility carries right now, is straightforward. Boots into Aquila into Dominator before Threads, and you will see one being purchased afterwards in case you didn't start with the Magic Wand build. Baby Knight for some reason went face boots in the game he was playing, but Threads is the build, and in close to 12 minutes you should have Threads, Aquila, Wand and Dominator, with maybe some gold towards Dragonlance. Troll Warlord is a funny combination of a melee and range hero. The opener is very reminiscent of heroes like Lifestealer, stealth should always, 2 regen items, sometimes 3, and you want to finish PMS in the side shop as fast as possible, followed by Quelling Blade and Phase Boots. A lot of times, trolls start with Blades of Attack instead of Boots, especially if the offlaner was completely zoned. Troll doesn't have the best damage, and if you have the possibility to have more damage without dying because of it, then it's fine. At 12 minutes into the game, you should have Phase Boots, PMS, Helm of the Dominator, maybe Wand or maybe Raindrops, and closing in one of the Senge and Yasha items. If you're farming more than you're fighting, then Yasha is definitely the best option. Some players are experimenting with Senge first, this was never built before, but after the buff some people have been trying to build it first, especially when they feel forced into early fights. In a game with Magnus, Fear tried a greedier build, going Morbid Mask instead of Dominator and rush Sandy and Yasha. Morbid Mask does synergize pretty well with Troll because of the extra damage, and having more damage from Empower guarantees him that he will be full HP while farming, but I'm pretty sure that in a normal game, Helm of the Dominator is just better and more reliable. Ursa is very similar to Juggernaut in starting item build. Stealth shield, 2 regen items, and maybe a mana regen item like Mango. Ursa, like Juggernaut, has a lot of burst potential in lane, and if you feel like you can get kills, it's always advisable to go for the item. Unlike Juggernaut though, Ursa is better at taking less hits, and you will see most Ursas going boots into face before upgrading their stealth shield to PMS or even getting Quelling Blade. But PMS is almost always the next choice. The 2 next items are almost always Blink or Helm of the Dominator. In this game, Matumba Man is against Ember Spirit, Weaver, Clockwork, counter initiation, so getting early kills with Blink is kinda hard, and even if he can, he can probably be bursted down afterwards. So farming until your next power spike, level 2 of Enrage, is probably a wiser choice. This is very similar to what we saw with Slarks going Midas or Juggernaut going Asha first. At the 12-minute mark, you're going to pretty much always have Phase Boots, Magic Wand, PMS, and either Dominator or Blink. People that start with Dominator always go for Blink next, and people who go Blink first sometimes go Basher, Vlad's, Desolator, even Vanguard, but they never go back to Helm of the Dominator later. So pay attention to that. Anti-Mage is not the most common pick in this meta, yet there are situations where he is very good. This has been AM's role throughout Dota's history, I guess. So what are the starting item builds? More often than not, the usual build is 2 sets of Tango, Salve, and Stealth Shield. If you're against an easier lane, you can always go for 2 Regen items and get PMS right away after taking the Bounty Rune. PMS is the item you always go for, followed by Quelling Blade and then the Ring of Regen, because you're going for Helm of the Dominator or you're just leaving it there. There are times the order is different. Against this Quap, Magic Stick was the first item he went for after PMS. Sometimes if you're against a slow hero, you can get Boots and take all his mana away, but after 12 minutes you're probably going to be close on finishing battle free with your Ring of Regen, PMS, and Treads. If you went Helm of the Dominator, you're going to have PMS, Treads, Quelling Blade, and Helm of the Dominator with some money towards your Battle Fury. There are change-ups. In this game against Medusa, Arteezy didn't build Battle Fury and went Helm of the Dominator straight into Manta. At 12 minutes though, he had exactly the items I showed for the Dominator build. Well, this wraps up for today. If you enjoyed this video, please guys, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see the extended version of this video, please check the link in the description. Pugna is a platform where you can learn from people like Chessie, Fog, Munib, and get better at the game. They have now great content on 702, and if you want to raise your MMR, this is a great time. Just figure out the patch faster than others and get those easy wins. X doesn't benefit a lot from PMS. Pretty much the only opener I have seen from offlane X's is a very heavy on regen starting item build. 2 Tangos, Salve, and Stealth. Sometimes you will see a Ring of Protection in there instead of a set of Tangos to finish Tranquils in the side shot. There are games that you shouldn't go Tranquils though. In this game for instance, he's against a lot of burst physical damage. The Monkey King support had a good run, and on top of that they have a Clinks. So in a game he didn't have a best start, against 2 invisible heroes and a Monkey King roaming on his ass, there's no way he can use the Tranquils to farm the jungle